So I moved back to New York, and I decided to pursue my other great love, which was literature, and I got my master's. And when I walked on stage to receive my diploma, I was already several months pregnant with my son. So having children was the #1 item on my carpe diem list. It was the thing that I wanted to do more than anything else, and the thing I was most scared to lose. So when I saw my son, who's here today, he's 10 years old now, but 10 years ago on Thanksgiving Day, oh, there I am pregnant. When I saw him for the first time, I was suffused with all of the feelings that new parents are, joy and marvel and gratitude. But for me, there was an extra layer, which was also relief and appreciation at being able to see him at all, because I had never been sure that that would be possible. It was so great that 2 years later, I had another child, my daughter, and I felt the same kind of beatitude and just sublime joy when I saw her adorable little face. The year that I had my daughter was also the year that I turned 30. And as such, it marked the 10-year anniversary of my diagnosis. So as it turned out, the doctor had not been far off. By that point, I had lost enough vision to be deemed legally blind. I had lost most of my nighttime vision and my peripheral vision. So I bumped into everything. Oh, thank you. You're going to fix my strange button here on my computer. I bumped into, coffee tables, monkey bars, slides, cabinet doors. One time I bashed my nose into a cabinet door so hard, blood spurted on my carpet, and then I had to Google, how do you know if you broke your nose? I didn't break my nose, I don't think. So that wasn't fun. I also developed these big, cloudy cataracts, and they made everything blurry. Details were impossible to discern. This was troubling because I had just gotten my master's in English literature, and I loved to read, and now I couldn't even fill out the forms at the pediatrician's office or sign up for, parent-teacher conference, much less read a novel. So that was tricky. I developed color blindness, so I had to rely on my toddler son to dress me. Thank God. He was extremely fashion-forward and very stylish. So all put together, it was a significant amount of vision loss. But nobody knew I was losing my vision because I had become so incredibly adept in the past decade at compensating for it. I had developed dozens of strategies and tricks. Handshakes were always very hard when you have no peripheral vision. And so inevitably, somebody would stick their hand out and I wouldn't see it, and then they would just stand there feeling like very exposed and thinking I was extremely rude until finally they withdrew their hand just at the exact moment that I realized it was there. So I developed a solution. I would just stick my hand out as soon as I sniffed an introduction in the works, and in that way I would beat them to the punch. Ordering from menus was very hard, always, but particularly in low light situations. And so I just ordered a lot of Caesar salads. Like this, what you're eating is what I ate for years, because there's always Caesar salad on the menu. And barring that, I would just have what my friend's having, because it made me seem fun-loving and spontaneous, and it didn't at all expose that I was visually impaired. I had dozens of tricks like this, and I employed them so frequently that they just became second nature, and I would use them without even thinking about it. The problem was, it was all incredibly exhausting, enormously stressful, and really draining. And so I realized that not only was I coping with vision loss while raising 2 small children, but I was doing it while maintaining this elaborate and totally unnecessary lie. So, as it turned out, motherhood was the experience powerful enough to pull me out of my denial. It has a tendency to do that. I realized I could do things for the sake of my children that I wouldn't do for my own sake. I was concerned not so much about the toll of my vision loss on them, but about the toll of the secret on them. And it was very important to me that I instill certain values in my children. Chief among these were honesty, courage, resiliency, and I was exemplifying the very opposite of this. I knew they would encounter obstacles in their life, and when they did, I wanted them to face those obstacles, head on, with adaptability and equanimity. I did not want them to run screaming and yelling in the opposite direction and just bury their head in the sand. And that was exactly what I was doing. So the knowledge that I was failing them really ate away at me until finally it became a force more powerful and motivating than the forces of vanity and pride and fear, more than anything else, that had prompted me to keep my vision loss a secret. So when I was 33, and my daughter was 3 and my son was about 5, I decided to confront the boogeyman of blindness. I called the New York State Commission for the Blind, and they provided me with all the services they had. I went to the Adaptive Technology Center, which sounded super boring, but is the opposite of boring. It was a magical wonderland. I really wanted them to teach me how to text. I had had a smartphone for many years, but there was nothing smart about my phone because I couldn't see anything and it did nothing. I had to manually dial people's phone numbers from my memory like a person from the medieval times. It was horrible. And I couldn't text. My phone would ding, bing, and I knew someone somewhere was trying to tell me something, but I had no earthly idea who it was or what they were trying to say. Worse, because no one knew about my vision loss, I had to explain my aversion to texting by saying I was a Luddite who just preferred to communicate verbally. And it was a paltry, flimsy lie that nobody was buying because everybody texted, including my mother, who didn't know how to microwave popcorn. So the day that I went to the Adaptive Technology Center and the instructor showed me how I could tap my iPhone and suddenly, like a miracle, I could see my iPhone. I am not overstating the case when I say choirs of angels were singing hallelujah. It was absolutely a miracle moment. I could see. I did amazing things. I learned how to check the weather and use my contact list and email people. So that was spectacular. I was assigned a vocational and mobility instructor, and that's the section I'm going to read from my book in a second. So I won't say too much except to say that she was an absolute game changer to me. Her name was Esperanza, and Kate mentioned the average amount of time it takes from a diagnosis until someone gets help is 5 years. Mine was a lot longer than that, and I had all sorts of baggage. I was stubborn. I was impossible to work with, and she was so gentle and easygoing, but with an iron will. She refused to let me off the hook, but let me do it in my own time, and I am just forever grateful to her. So I'm going to tell you more about her when I read. One of the things, the final thing that she did was she taught me how to use the mobility cane. And this was something I did not want to do because to me, the cane really was a symbol. It symbolized blindness. As soon as I picked it up, I would be blind with a capital B, all hope would be lost, I'd be doomed, Armageddon would ensue, and I refused to pick it up. And so I put her off as long as I could until finally she just said, you can choose where you want to do it, but we are training you on this cane. So I chose the Gowanus area of Brooklyn, which you probably don't know about it, but it is the place where if you were a mobster, you would take someone to shoot them at close range, and their body would never be discovered because it is totally abandoned and deserted. So I knew I wouldn't run into anybody, but just to be safe, I also put on an incognito disguise, and I wore this floor-length down coat I borrowed from my grandmother, and this black knit hat, and these huge sunglasses, and there, dressed like a crazy person, next to the abandoned warehouses, I learned how to use the mobility cane. And of course, as one would expect, as soon as I did, I felt a tremendous sense of relief, like, a 10-ton weight had been lifted from my shoulders. When Esperanza was done with her training, she urged me to please go see a support group because she knew I didn't want to, but I really would benefit. And she was right. I did not want to. I didn't want to go to the support group more than I didn't want to train on the cane, which was like the maximum amount of dread. Because the explanation is simple. If you're pretending that you're not going blind and you're avoiding blindness at all costs, you should never go to a room full of blind people. Totally ruins your buzz. So I did ultimately take her advice. I went to a support group, and there I met a woman who lived a few blocks from me, was a writer like I was, and had not one, not two, but 3 children, which was mind-blowing to me. And when I heard that and I started a friendship with her, it opened a door of possibility for me that I didn't think was possible. I had always wanted a 3rd child, but I just didn't think it was feasible. So we have her to thank for my 3rd child, and my husband jokes that I can never meet a visually impaired person who has 4 children, because then we will be sunk in our tiny little apartment. So all of those things were really like ripping off a Band-Aid. It stings for a minute, and then once the sting fades, your healing can really begin. And for me, once the healing began, I was able to do 2 things that I couldn't do before. One of them was have that baby. She just turned 3 last month, and of course, we're very fond of her and glad that she was a possibility for us. The other thing I could do was write a book, and that's the book that I will be reading from and signing. The book was so more than a dream come true. I mean, both of those things were hard, but also dream come trues. The book was also this critical step in my journey of acceptance. Not just the writing, which was cathartic, but more the reception of the book and the feedback I've gotten since the publication. I have heard from thousands of people, so many of them blind and visually impaired, and every time I read their message and hear their stories, I am just stunned and awed by just the sheer diversity and the breadth of experience that I see. I mean, people are doing everything you could possibly imagine. There's firefighters, opera singers, dancers, therapists, teachers. I mean, there's people living everywhere with all kinds of families doing anything. And it is so inspiring to me because it just proves to me without a shadow of a doubt that blindness is not a deal breaker. It's not a closed door. I wish I could go back to that 19-year-old version of myself right after my diagnosis, because all I saw in front of me then were closed doors. And if I showed that girl these messages, then she would know that blindness doesn't mean that you have to lose perspective. In fact, it frequently means just the opposite. So I'm going to end with a quote from Helen Keller, because you can't talk about losing your vision and blindness for an hour without quoting Helen Keller. She was extremely smart. And this is my favorite. If I could tell my kids one thing, this is the message I would want them to know. Character cannot be developed in ease and quiet. Only through the experience of trial and suffering can the soul be strengthened, ambition inspired, and success achieved. So I'm going to read a short, funny section, if you're not too sick of me. And yes, this is from in between every chapter of my book. I have a tip for the secretly blind. And they're all like real ways that I would hide my blindness. This one is called On Cleaning House. The wonderful thing about going blind is that along with the beautiful sights, you miss unattractive ones. You won't see your crow's feet or the thinning of your husband's hair. You will walk blithely by a trio of rats feasting on a dog turd. And you will not notice the state of extreme filth into which your house has sunk. Unfortunately, everyone else will. So, how do you clean what you can't see? If the filth becomes significant enough, you'll feel it, hear it, or worse, smell it. As a rule, surfaces in homes are not meant to feel sticky or oozing, not meant to make crunchy sounds when encountered, or emit odors that cause you to gag. If this happens, you know it's time to clean. Attack the revolting areas with a sponge until all offensive smells, sounds, and textures are eradicated. Alternatively, you could invite your obsessive clean freak of a mother over, hand her a bucket of bleach, and let nature take its course. Chapter 17, Surrendering. The first time Esperanza called, David hung up on her. He thought she was a telemarketer, raising money for a charity, the kind that always sent us envelopes with fake coins glued in the address window. No thanks, we don't want to donate, David had asserted. A minute later, the phone rang again. This time, I picked up. This is Esperanza Espinosa, and I am not asking for donations. She'd informed me, quiet but firm, I am your vocational therapist and mobility instructor. I liked her immediately. The more I got to know her, the more I found to like. Esperanza was young and pretty, a small woman with a heart-shaped face and animated eyes. She had a consummately gentle way about her, never raised her voice or issued a word that she didn't consider first, in all ways the very opposite of me. She exuded warmth from her soft Spanish accent to her wavy black bob. She was so gentle and easygoing, in fact, that it took me a few sessions to figure out exactly what she was supposed to be teaching me. She'd introduced herself as a vocational therapist and mobility instructor, a vague title that was more or less meaningless to me. But after a while, I came to understand that she was teaching me how to be blind without accidentally killing myself. Our first few sessions were pretty painless. She'd come over, play with 3-year-old Rosa for a bit, and then pass along casual tips about how to clean your kitchen effectively and how to cook pasta without burning your house down. Let's talk about kids and clutter, Esperanza suggested at our 3rd or 4th meeting. For the visually impaired, less is really more, she advised. Keeping your belongings to a minimum helps you to find things more easily and also can prevent accidents. I thought immediately of the cookie cutter incident just a few months before. Rosa had unearthed my collection of seasonally festive cookie cutters, Easter eggs and snowmen and jack-o'-lanterns, oh my. She'd used the metal cookie cutters to take her Play-Doh work to the next level. And when she was done, she'd abandoned them on the living room floor and moved on to the science experiment that involved emptying my sample-sized bottle of Chanel into the radiator. As I'd run across the room to rescue the heating system and my perfume, my bare foot encountered one of the cookie cutters, the bat-shaped one with wings spread. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph! I howled. The pain was considerable enough that all 3 needed invocation. What the hell? Mommy's foot is not a cookie! At this, the children erupted into shrieks of laughter. Let's see if the bottom of your foot has a bat on it, Lorenzo squealed. The fact that it did delighted them and infuriated me. That's it, I pronounced. These cutters are going right in the garbage. I hadn't done it, of course, but now Esperanza was telling me I should, with no compunction. The whole setup was odd, but not unpleasant. We'd sip Earl Grey tea at my grimy kitchen, while she relayed life-saving kernels of wisdom or quizzed me on life skills. How can you ensure safety while cutting fruits and vegetables? You mean blind people, right? Yes, Esperanza confirmed. How do blind people safely slice vegetables? I repeated, is this a trick question? She smiled, but I wasn't kidding. I don't know. Buy pre-sliced frozen vegetables, I guessed. Well, that's one option. Unfailingly encouraging, Esperanza would never explicitly tell me I was wrong. But my goal is to help you retain as much independence as possible. So, if you wanted to slice the vegetables yourself, oh, I don't, I assured her. Like, even now, when I can see I never want to slice vegetables. I'm already looking for a reason not to do it, and I feel like blindness will serve as the perfect excuse. I understand, but if you change your mind, despite her gentle demeanor, Esperanza was impossible to deter. She would equip me with tools to retain my independence, whether I wanted them or not. You'll just be sure to hold the vegetables in place with your upper knuckles rather than your fingertips, and use a knife with a good grip to avoid slippage. I envisioned the future me wearing sunglasses in the kitchen, preparing a magnificent roast for a dinner party, the kind I never threw now, but for some reason imagined I would once cooking was even more of an ordeal. I pictured myself taking a cleaver carefully out in hand, securing a potato with my knuckles, and slicing off all 4 of those knuckles with one deft motion. Other people who sliced off their knuckles could at least find them and bring them to the hospital to have them sewed back on. But I wouldn't stand a chance of locating my severed digits, especially with only one hand to grope with. Yes, slicing and dicing while blind seemed like a big risk with little payoff. But I didn't want to insult Esperance's advice, so I kept the observation to myself. So that's all I'm going to read, guys. Thank you so much. Come see me. If you have questions, I don't think we have time for questions. Do we? Anyone have? I have no peripheral vision.
I listened to your book in audio, okay, and I was dumbstruck that you had narrated your own audiobook. And I want to know how you did that so well. I mean, it was wonderful that it was you telling the story because you are so funny. But how did you do that?
Yeah, I was nervous about that. The ironic part is I can't read my own hardcover book because the print is too small. So I read from my Kindle, and you can magnify the print so much. So I just read it from my Kindle, and I have written, this has been draft upon draft upon draft. So the reading of it was much more seamless and easy than it would be. I mean, if you heard me reading to my kids, my husband sometimes overhears, he's like, is that what it says? Or do you literally just make half of this stuff up? And sometimes my daughter will be like, Mom, that's not what those words say. So it's much more halting and interrupted, and it's much more of a struggle. But because I was so familiar with the text, and I could make the text so big on my Kindle, it was easy for me to do.
Other question? Don't be shy.
Yes. I will also be, oh boy.
I have a question.
Yes?
Did you make up any of the characters in your book?
That's my son. He always asks the hardest question. He's like Lois Lane over here trying to indict me always and catch me up. It was actually an interesting, writing a memoir, is that the end of your question?
Yes.
Thank God. Writing a memoir is really interesting because, you have to take real life, which is so unruly and messy and doesn't conform to a satisfying narrative structure, and make it, wrestle it into some kind of narrative form where people feel like they're going on a journey with you. So I didn't make anything up, no. What I did was, I would compress things. So I basically did you a huge favor and took a lot of the very boring stuff out. So I just compressed the timeline and, a little bit of editing, timing so that it felt less onerous. But no, all of the characters are real characters. Their names have been changed to protect the innocent and particularly the guilty. But yeah, it was mostly just compressing the timeline. And people ask me how I remember what happened. And, thankfully I took copious, I was a big journal writer. So I've always written a lot. So I could consult journals and letters. And then later I had a parenting blog. So that was fun to revisit all of that. Oh, I think we're done, but I will be signing books, so come see me, and if you have questions or comments. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you for sharing your story about acceptance and learning to navigate a new reality. Amazing, truly inspirational. I really want to thank St. Martin's Press for the chance today to include your book, Nicole, in our fundraising efforts. But before Nicole's speech, you heard Kate give an unfortunate statistic that the average time between someone receiving a low vision diagnosis and finding vision loss resources is 5 years. This is way too long to live with the frustrations and fears of vision loss. My fellow Vision Loss Resources board member, Jim Dale, knows this story all too well. As he will tell you, the time from his initial diagnosis of retinitis pigmentosa, the same disorder as Nicole talked about today, the time from that diagnosis to the time he walked through the front doors of Vision Loss Resources was 5 years. For Jim and his family, the community of support gave him the tools and confidence to take back his life. I'll let him tell you his story firsthand. Jim?
Lisa just mentioned that I have RPL, and to most, you refer to it as tunnel vision. And I tell my friends and family that I see life through a toilet paper tube. And because that is now turning into a drinking straw, I just completed the rehab portion at VLR. And in that time, I learned to read Braille. I learned to be savvy with computers and iPhones. And the most important thing that I learned was to cook dinner again for my family. What this place has given me is community, a work-life skill set, and finally, confidence. So I'm going to share my journey with you and what VLR has given me. It started out the first day. When I walked through the doors, I didn't have one of these yet, and just like she was talking about, this is a big deal. I faked it for many years, like she was talking about, but I realized that I had found my people. And think everyone, the high school years when you go through the cafeteria line and you have to sit at a table. Where are you going to find your people? Well, with VLR, I found mine. And in addition to just a loneliness factor, it has more to do with isolation. So if anyone in the audience has a disability or a disease, and it can be eye-related, but for a lot of people, there's blindness, Alzheimer's, cancer. And for that time, we all find ourselves isolated, not knowing where to go, what to do. We feel like no one has ever been through this before, and that's how I felt. When I found VLR, it was the institution that I had been waiting for. And in the process and the time that I was there, I lost anxiety, I got rid of my depression, I found my place. And that leads me to the next portion of skill building, call it work-life skill building, and confidence. They're kind of intertwined. How can you go to a place that offers wood shop with power tools for blind people? You got some big fears when you walk in, but when you actually make your little birdhouse that they offer, you gain skills and you gain confidence. But with me, there was a little more of a nuance involved. And we talked about mobility already. When I took this cane and walked the icy city streets of Minneapolis in rush hour at 8 a.m. with the sun blazing down the east, from the east, cars couldn't see because, of course, drivers are texting and they don't have sunglasses. And I am worried for my life. Those kind of things make you strong and they give you confidence. And the main thing that I learned from this process was to slow down. And that took a long time for me. My epiphany moment happened actually during a cooking class. I baked a chocolate cake and it was dynamite. I finally realized that my fear was going away and it was being replaced with just personal grit. I was really feeling like I was getting my creativity back. You see, I used to cook in the kitchen and I lost it. And it was coming back to me, and I could chop onions again. I've lived those digit stories, and I got them all. And for me, I went home one night, and made my wife a meatloaf dinner. Little wine, garlic and onion smell throughout the house. She walked in after a hard day of work, beamed with a smile. Finished our meal. She was so ecstatic she had her husband back. I had my confidence back. And confidence is very, very powerful. And pretty sexy, too. So, thank you. We came here today for a purpose, to listen, to contemplate, and hopefully make a difference. We're all together in this. I think we all believe in vision loss resources. This community has been here 100 years, and now we hear a need that we need to grow, and there are programs. And I'd like you to open your wallets and checkbooks today and take a look at those envelopes in front of you and write a check to VLR. And that check can be, for example, $150, which would take care of an adult in-home assessment like we talked about earlier. $75 can take care of 2 technology sessions to help folks, whether it's computer-related, iPhone-related, those kind of things. Those help people. And what I want you to do more than anything is realize that VLR is a community. We're here to help people. And for any nonprofit to be successful for over 100 years is very special. So if you make a contribution of $20, you'll get a free signed copy of Nicole's book, Now I See You. And I want to let you know that this place has helped me dramatically. That's why I'm standing in front of you right now. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your donations. Thank you very much.
Again, wow. Thank you, Jim. We are fortunate to have you as a part of our Vision Loss Resources family, as a client and now a board member. I want to thank Nicole Kear for joining us. I want to thank our sponsors again. We are honored to have your support, and we're glad you're here with us today. Anchor Bank, Deaf Blind Services Minnesota, the law firm of Chestnut Cabron, and my team at eCapital Advisors. On behalf of Kate, the staff, and our board, thank you to all of our guests for being here, for listening to our stories, for sharing your stories with us, and for your generous support, which allows Vision Loss Resources to continue to change lives. Thank you again.